MacBook Pro 13 was released as the first wave of Apple's transition over to its own M1 processors. It's small, portable, fairly powerful, and unlike the MacBook Air, it does have an active cooling system inside of it. However, I think it's pretty easy to say that after this first year, this might be the most disappointing of all of the first generation M1 Macs. It's not bad, it's just not as good, or it's not as actually great as the others it's standing next to. And because the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro 14, and the M1 Mac Mini exist, I don't really have a use case in which I can wholeheartedly say, hey, go get the MacBook Pro 13.
The new M1 MacBook Pro and MacBook Air are outstanding. Their performance almost lives up to Apple's extraordinary claims. Their look and feel is reassuringly Apple grade. Their battery life is, simply put, exemplary. And the transition from x86 to ARM, so far at least, has gone shockingly smoothly. Linus, you might say. Those don't really sound like problems. And they're not. For you. You gotta pay attention. I said Apple has a problem, because it's gonna be really hard to one-up what they've done here. Even if you were to go out of your way to point out the flaws, it's hard not to recommend either of the M1 MacBooks. They really are just that good.
At the base model, like the entry-level stuff, we have the regular M1 products. So the 13-inch MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and these are very energy efficient and quite capable. But for the vast majority of people out there, that 8-core M1, like the entry-level product from Apple, can do so much stuff.
So, would I recommend this laptop? Big reveal coming. No. I would never, of course I would recommend this laptop. Of course I would recommend it, 1000% I would recommend this laptop. I would recommend you to get any Apple M1 laptop that you can find actually, whether it's the MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro. Really, I just think that it seems like it's the best choice of laptop that you can get right now.
The M1 MacBook Pro is a good laptop, but I just can't recommend it anymore. So here's how I look at this decision. For the majority of buyers, the MacBook Air is a perfect laptop. It's plenty powerful, it's super efficient, it's light, it's portable, and you can get it for under $1,000. If you need more, then the choice comes down to $1,699 for the 13-inch MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of unified memory and 512 gigs of internal storage, or $1,999 for the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip and the same amount of memory and internal storage. So personally, I think that you're getting a lot more for this extra $300, and I would go with either the MacBook Air or the 14-inch MacBook Pro.
Could have been 10s, Dieter.
Yeah, they could have been 10s.
Seriously, the only real knock on these machines is that Apple insists on using horrible webcams in its laptops. Apart from that, you're looking at a huge jump in performance and significantly improved battery life for the same price as the last models, and seamless compatibility with the entire ecosystem of existing Mac apps.
There were 1,000 things that could have gone wrong with this transition. The iOS apps were a whiff, but everything else didn't just go right. Apple exceeded our expectations.
But right now, this is, in my opinion, a portable Mac Pro. So this does all the tasks I need of the Mac Pro. It's quiet. It's only ever spun up the fans twice, once playing that game, once exporting video, and only when it's connected to that external display does it spin up the fan. Otherwise, it doesn't when you're exporting video. So it's incredibly quiet. It works great. It has amazing battery life, and I highly recommend it.
So what should the takeaway be from all of this information? So if what you're going to do with a laptop is going to be a lot of browsing, photo editing, graphics design, some video editing on Final Cut Pro, I'd say the MacBook Air actually perfectly fits what you need from a computer. But if you need something with a bit beefier specifications, then I do think the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros are the way to go. Before these were released, you'd likely buy a 13-inch MacBook Pro and increase the specifications. However, now the new 14-inch MacBook Pro costs the same as a 13-inch one with those increased specs. So to me, it is a bit of a no-brainer.
So here's the bottom line. I'm blown away. Like, this is a huge step forward for Apple. And this is what they've been waiting for years, to finally create a MacBook that's silent, that has amazing battery life, and has performance like nothing else out there. I usually don't recommend first generation products, but I'm gonna recommend this one.
The fact of the matter is the MacBook Pro M1 is a perfectly fine creative laptop, especially thanks to the fantastic battery life on this thing. Definitely really handy if you want to be editing on the go at some point in 2021 when we can actually leave our houses again. And the performance is good, as I stated before, if you actually stick to Apple's own rulebook. But if you want to be using third-party software and the like, you're not going to get any benefits from the M1 that you wouldn't get from much cheaper Windows devices.
So let's talk about my recommended configurations. If you're a content creator, whether it's for photos, videos, or music, I would go with 16 gigabytes of RAM. If you're only editing photos and it's more of a hobby than, say, a job, 8 gigabytes of RAM will most likely be okay. If you mostly use your Mac for web browsing, emails, doc work, etc., then you might want to take a look at the MacBook Air. For storage,